Flyers, and of course, part of the NBC Sports Philadelphia broadcast team, and nationally as well. Brian Boucher joins us. Bouch, good morning, man. How you doing?
Morning, guys. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're excited for a new head coach here and excited for a new direction. And there's a lot of conflicting opinions, Brian, because people are wondering the whole Back to the Future thing always gets tagged to the Flyers about going back to the Flyers well. And Jonesy and Briere have had to fight it, you know, when they got their positions. Tell us why the hire of Rick Tocchet may be different.
Well, first of all, I mean, I understand people's concerns with all that, but Tocc's been away from the Flyers for a long time. I mean, you could argue that he spent more time in other organizations than he did in Philadelphia. So this is not like he's a guy that's a Flyers lifer who, you know, when he got done playing, he hung around the organization, scouted, now has moved up the chain and, you know, is your head coach. I mean, this is a guy that won a championship as a player in Pittsburgh, won 2 championships in Pittsburgh as an assistant coach. He coached some teams that had no business being playoff teams. He coached, and then, you know, in some cases got those teams to the playoffs. So coached in big-time market. Like Vancouver is a huge market. It's a very difficult place to coach in a place like that in Canada. So to me, Tocchet has been around the block, and he's so well respected around the league by everybody, from ex-players to current players to coaches, managers, media, all alike. I mean, this is a terrific hire for the Flyers, and I think bringing a guy that knows what it's like to be a Flyer, that has been you know, molded into who he is by being a Flyer early on in his career, I think is just I think it's a home run for the Flyers.
The two of you were teammates in the early parts of your career, your first stint here with Philadelphia. You've been able to also cover him nationally as a head coach. What kind of similarities have you seen from his playing career into his coaching career, and how much does that translate to a player?
Well, the Rick Tocchet you saw as a player, that feisty, stick up for your teammate type of guy who played with great intensity, is what you get as a coach. But it's also kind of misleading too. I think what people don't realize is that Tocchet is really he's an unbelievable guy, and he connects with people. And I think in today's day and age, everybody thinks that everybody's smarter than everybody else when it comes to how you figure out how you coach or how you manage or how you analyze. Everybody's coming up with numbers and algorithms as to how to, you know, get the most out of people. I think really at the end of the day, I think you need people in positions of leadership like what Tocchet is as a head coach to connect with his players, to understand how to get the most out of them, how to hold them accountable. It doesn't have to be in a way that the way it used to be, where, you know, you tell a player it has to be a certain way, and there's, you know, and you don't explain why it has to be that way. It just is. I think Tocchet understands that he can be firm, he can be hard, but he also knows how to talk to these players because he's been in every single situation you could ever imagine as a player, as an assistant coach, as a head coach. He gets it. He knows what these players are going through, and I think that is so invaluable. I think, you know, sometimes if you were to get somebody that's green and doesn't really understand the NHL game and how it goes, you know, they're going to have some tough, you know, learning curves as far as dealing with personalities and star players. Tocchet knows how to deal with star players. He knows how to talk to the fourth line grinder, and he knows how to get the most out of all those guys. And I just think guys respect him so much around the league in all different areas. That, you know, and that's what he was as a player, too. We saw the guy that was feisty and would fight and all that, and obviously chip in goals. But what you don't see is the behind-the-scenes stuff that makes him so well-liked and probably sought after around the league from so many teams that had head coaching job vacancies.
Brian, some of the things you said there, I don't want to misrepresent it in any way, but it seems like you were comparing and contrasting the man he's replacing, John Tortorella. Can you tell us the things you see that are potential positive changes in what Rick Tocchet brings to the table, but maybe what Rick Tocchet's going to need from his assistant coaches to be able to have different results on the ice than what John Tortorella was able to deliver?
Well, let's start with the assistant coaches. I don't know who the assistants are going to be yet, and you know that'll it'll be interesting to see if that's more Tocchet's doing, who he wants to bring in, and who he trusts. I think the assistant coaches, they tend to be guys that are like liaisons between the players and the head coach, oftentimes, and that's good. But I think Tocchet has the ability to have that connection with his players as a head coach, which is unique. So I think he relies on his assistants, for how they're going to play systematically. Like, the penalty kill to the power play to neutral zone play, D zone play. Like, they're going to be the ones that are really, hammering down that side of it. I think Tocchet handles relationships very well. I don't think he needs to. He doesn't need to be a guy that's like standoffish as a head coach and let the assistants be the go-between. Tocchet will address it, head on, and not in a combative way. I think he's a guy's guy, and he can talk to anybody. So I think that'll be what the assistants are doing. Probably system play, and doling out, how the team wants to play. That'll be what they do. As far as the difference between he and Torts, and I think Torts, I have a immense respect for Torts. I mean, this guy, he works his tail off, and he has a certain way. He's got conviction in what he believes, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, Tocchet was a player. Tocchet wore so many different hats than say John Tortorella. And I think when you break it down and players get face to face with a coach and they're talking inside the office, when a guy played and has been in certain situations, he's been a fourth liner, he's been a first liner, he's made international tournaments, didn't make was pushed out the door as a player late in his career, understands that. I mean, you're talking to a guy that you really can relate to. When you're having a conversation with him, you know that he understands what you've been through. And when you have coaches, and this is just not Torts, when you have a coach that never played, it's hard to have. Something's missing there. There's a piece that's missing in that relationship between player and coach. And I think Tocchet just checks off a lot of boxes that I think is going to make a difference in the way players approach the game and the way that you can get the most out of them and taking them to the next level.
Last thing, Boucher, and I think this is important to hear from you because you obviously cover the Flyers, but you also do stuff nationally. How close are the Flyers to being a playoff contender, and then if you want to go one step further, to being a cup contender? Because this is just year 2 of a rebuild, but just last year, 2 seasons ago, they were in playoff contention, which nobody expected, and I think that kind of confused a lot of fans, thinking that they were closer than what they actually were. So how close do you think they are?
As currently constructed, not as close as they'd want to be. And 2 years ago, I think that was a mirage. I think their batting average was very high. I mean, they probably batted 500. So, I mean, how many people bat 500 in MLB? So, I think they were in a situation where anybody that was really paying attention understood that they were doing better than a lot of people expected. I think they got to make some changes. I mean, I think they've got to add some players. I think this is a big off season with regards to addition to the roster, and I'd like to answer that question when we near training camp to see what changes Danny Briere was able to make as far as adding players. He talked about being in phase 2 of the rebuild, and now it's about adding some pieces. I'm sure he is ambitious as far as what he wants. The question will be, can he do it? Can he get it? It's not easy in certain cases to make trades or to get players to sign in free agency. Not that free agency these days is the way to really go and build a team. So yeah, it'll be when let's see what the roster brings, and then we can talk about how close they really are. But I think in getting a head coach like this, I think what you do is now you've added a guy that I think people respect around the league. Agents respect this guy. Players respect this guy. So if there is a situation where Philadelphia could be a potential destination for certain players, they're kind of, you know what? I like Tocchet. Tocchet's the guy that I want to play for. Players have had good experiences with him. And that to me is a positive. That's what you want. And hopefully this team, listen, I mean, there are a lot of teams that are hurting right now that are in a tough place. Pittsburgh's in a tough place. The Islanders are in a tough spot. The Rangers have a lot of question marks. I mean, when you look at the Metro Division, the Flyers are not the only team that have a lot of question marks. If they can make some changes, they may be closer to being a playoff team than we think, but time will only tell with that.
As you work the playoffs, they could use a goaltending influx of talent. Maybe a veteran this offseason would help.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I think I'm a fan of Sam Harrison. I said it on broadcast, and I'm not lying when I say it. I do like Sam. I think he's a good goalie. I just think that he's probably, from what I've seen in the 2 years that I've covered the team, I think he's a 1B and a guy that can share the net. So yeah, I think you got to find somebody that can give you 40 games that you can trust, that can. If Sam is struggling, this guy's going to play 5-6 games in a row, and the team's not going to miss a beat. I think a lot of teams need that guy. They're super important. There's probably only 3-4 guys that play 60